Dear CIO friends, welcome to this second session of the career transformation program which we are having. And on behalf of CIS of India, I thank you all for joining on this Friday evening session. This program, no, like many others which we keep doing, is not a sponsored program. And as you all know, that no, our focus is not to create funds and kind of do a lot of these sponsorship programs, because those becomes too vendor focused. So that's the reason we avoid doing too many of them. But of course, to sustain, we do few of them. And our focus continues to be on empowering the CIO fraternity with relevant knowledge and information for them to excel in their pursuit. So that's what is our core theme and core focus. So I would now request Kamal to just give a brief about the work CIS of India is doing and the plans which we have in the coming few weeks. And over to you, Kamal. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Atul. Good evening, friends. Hope you are staying safe with your family. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of CIS of India. We are continuing ahead with the very interesting session which happened last week. Atul has briefed you on our session 1, which was Tech Leaders Career Transformation. Today, we are going to discuss about how to face interviews and go for salary negotiation. And we are going to discuss it from the perspective of senior tech leaders. So CIS of India is the oldest association of tech professionals. It was started in 1996 as a non-profit organization. And this year we have entered into 25th year. CIS of India does a lot of knowledge sessions for leaders like you. We do a lot of family and health sessions for your entire family. If you see this ticker, we are doing daily online yoga session taken by trained fellow CIO Naresh for you and for your family in the morning. If you want to attend, you can attend. This is free of cost. We can share the link in the chat box and you can register for the same. This Sunday, we are also bringing a session on COVID, post-COVID and black fungus. So if you have not registered for the same, please register. We will share the link in chat windows. Of India, we would like to tell you that we always create those opportunities for you where you can learn something, where you can add value to the time which you give to us. We majorly focus on the learning of tech leaders. We know that these upgradation of skills are very important, but we are also cognizant of the fact that real digital transformation, which we all need to bring, can only happen if we also reskill our IT teams and our teams in our organization. So we are working on that front also, and soon we are bringing courses which can be consumed by not only by CIOs, but also IT teams at large. So we are bringing a platform for all of you. So stay tuned for the same. So we will give intimation about those things. Keep following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and in WhatsApp group. From CIS of India, on behalf of entire EC team, I want to assure you that we will keep bringing those kind of value-added sessions for you. Now over to Atul and Mukesh.
Thanks, Kamal, and thanks, Atul, for the introduction about CIOs of India and the work we are doing. For the friends who attended this, I introduced Prakash, and for the friends who are attending this, missed out last week, we are again. I'm here. It's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Prakash Keval Ramani, a guest speaker for today. Prakash, by academics, is a IITian, BTech IIT from Delhi. He's done MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and having around 26 years of experience in HR recruitment, which includes managing last 15, 18, 20 years, managing global MNCs and then large Indian organizations. In 1994, he started this company, Impact HR Services, which is purely focused on a high recruitment agencies, which is having a premise offices based in Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. They are executive search. They are purely on the middle and the senior level, senior level recruitment. And he manages many end-to-end turnkey projects also. So over to Prakash. Let's have looking for another great session.
Sure. Thank you, Mukesh. Thank you, Atul, Kamal, and entire panel, and also this August audience today. It's my pleasure to be with you today. And for those who did not attend this program, what I will try to do is have a quick recap of last time's program. You are all senior IT professionals, so essentially it is really reinventing the wheel. Must have gone through all these processes earlier. You must be interviewing a lot of people in your own careers. So what I'm saying is really maybe a repeat of what you may have done, and it might look, I would say, I've been there, done that. But let's try to encapsulate what exactly is the entire recruitment all about. It may help you, may be able to give you some pointers in your own career. So there's a lot of, I would say, agenda to be covered today. Time is short, about 45, 50 minutes. Let's start off. And today I want to actually broad base the entire discussion. Although it says career transition and transformation of senior tech leaders, this is the entire agenda that we are once again facing in terms of the overall recruitment life cycle. Because when you are starting and talking of career transformation, you will start from the beginning, from first stage itself. We'll quickly go through what is the recruitment life cycle from a candidate perspective. Okay, organization do their own recruitment, their life cycle is very different. First, it starts with career planning. I'll come to all of this gradually as we go along the 45, 50-minute session. Next is starting with your resume, LinkedIn building, network building, job search, interview preparation. At the interview, what do you do? How do you do post-interview? What is supposed to be done? Salary negotiation. Then the organization do a fair amount, which you yourself have to mentally prepare, reference checks, background checks, medical checks, and why social media becomes a very, very important part of this entire exercise. Then, of course, the offer, after how do you evaluate offers that you get in terms of net take home and what invisible perks and all that. How do you close an offer? How do you accept offer? And finally, it relates to resignation, joining, onboarding. This is the entire life cycle of a recruitment from a candidate's perspective point of view. What is career planning? Career planning actually theoretically starts from a very, very young age. I have known a lot of my classmates and all who had started their career planning in school days. The person I am referring to was very clear, even when he joined IIT, where he wants to go, what road he wants to take, and what he wants to be in the matter of next 20, 25 years after he passes out. And he did all that. He really achieved all that he was there, and he became the chairman of one of India's leading organization, multinational organization. So that is all career planning all about. We must have heard of Sachin Tendulkar also. Very young age, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, we have seen a lot of photographs, he carrying a bat and all, coached by Coach Achrekar and all. He knew where he wants to go, what he wants to do in his career. So that is the entire theme about career planning. You know where, like you're all IT professionals, you have IT roadmaps for your organization for certain businesses or new businesses. You know what exactly is to be done, how to do it, how to go about doing it. That is all what career planning is all about. Yes, talking to CIOs right now, I can't talk about school and college days, but it's never too late to start your own career planning. Even now, at the age of 40, 45, 50, it's still never too late to start your own career. What is really required is you must have a clear goal. Like Sachin Tendulkar, he knew where he wanted to be. My classmate, he knew he wanted to be chairman of this company. So the goal was very clear, very focused, committed, put in a lot of hard work, a lot of passion. There were knocks also. Sometimes they were put out of gear in terms of what I would say nature turned out to be and all. But still, they did course correction, constant monitoring of what they were doing, where they're going. And finally, they reached their ultimate destination. Very recognized today. You can talk about Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli or anyone else. Or you can talk about Amitabh Bachchan. He had a lot of failures in his career. First job as a voiceover artist to All India Radio at Calcutta, he got rejected. And finally, he's recognized for his own baritone voice. So there will be ups and downs in your career. But ultimately, the goal has to be finally set, maybe reset, redefined. But you have to have a specific goal where you're going. If you achieve it, yes, you get name, fame, recognition, wealth, self-actualization. You can decide to do what type of assignments you want to do. Amitabh Bachchan can decide what roles excite him and all that. And you have a huge cult status and a fan following. This is what the dream of every professional would be. It all starts with the resume, because the resume, as we discussed, is the first point of contact between you and your potential employer. What you talk about, and it's a very, very complex thing. We all feel that it's very easy to make a resume. It's quite complex. It's a combination of many things. It's art, it's science, it's psychological, it's about your career history being panned out, and also it's very, very complex. People think it's very easy, but I think it's a very, very difficult thing. And a lot of, I would say, things are at stake with a resume. A resume wrongly crafted could set you back. You all senior people getting half a million, or sorry, half a 50 lakhs, 80 lakhs, 1 crore salary, and all. Next cycle you go to will be another 20-30% increase. Anything wrong at that stage can set you back. You're talking about several million rupees or several million dollars type of salaries. So you had to be very, very clear about your career, and also the resume. That is the first point of contact with your potential employer. When you make a resume, we have discussed last time, everyone should have a up-to-date resume at any time of the day and night. As I discussed, even if someone wakes you up in the middle of the night, here is a golden opportunity. You can't be left wanting. In fact, I was talking to someone from this particular August audience about 1 or 2 days back. The person is saying, today there's a golden opportunity, and unfortunately it's closing today. The resume is not ready. So if it reaches that stage, and it was one of the most, I would say, venerated multinational organizations, it will be very sad if you miss out because you didn't have a resume at the proper time and a proper resume. So you need to have a resume. You may not be applying for jobs immediately, but at least have it. You don't know when the opportunity will come knocking at your door. We'll discuss how do you make a resume, what do you say in a resume, how do you use resumes, and most important, you need to know, if you're like in boxing or anything, you need to know the psyche of your opponent. What exactly works in the person's mind, then you evolve your strategies to, I would say, overcome or defeat the person. Same thing over here. Your employer is not really your adversary, but he is at the opposite side of the table. You need to understand what clicks, what works for him, and try to orient your entire exercise and efforts to trying to win over the other person. Before I proceed to anything else, what I had explained last time, two major changes have happened in the world of recruitment in the last few years, 5 to 10 years time. And the biggest change is what I've highlighted in red, ATS, that is applicant tracking software. Last week, I think when I explained about it, a lot of you were very awed and overwhelmed about this. Let me try to take the tiger by its horn, or bull by the horn. These are the various brands of ATS that are there globally. I talked about 20-25 brands globally, and the largest one over here, if you see over here, is Taleo, with a 19 to 20% global market share. It is more than 1.5 to $2 billion industry, growing at 10 to 15% every year. We need to understand what is exactly applicant tracking system. See, most organizations today receive a whole lot of CVs every day. In fact, I was reading somewhere Google and Microsoft received about 70, 80,000 resumes in a week. Now, no one has the time and bandwidth and people to read so many resumes. So what happens is electronic devices, electronic softwares, which are applicant tracking system, have two roles. One is to quickly scan electronically the resume and extract all the key fields in the resume and park them in the company's database. Second advantage of an applicant tracking system is that most, as Atul was saying, CVs are very, I would say, different type. It's like your fingerprint. Each fingerprint is very unique. So someone will have education on top, someone will have chronological employment on top. So when a person is reading resumes quickly, he gets confused. Okay, abhi next kya aane wala hai? What type of CV? So the role of the ATS is to standardize all the resumes. When you're applying, your CV gets parked in the applicant tracking system, and what the people get, the person who's looking at your resume subsequently after it has gone through the applicant tracking system, is really information on Excel sheets. It's raw data that is generated and white labeled as per the company's requirement in terms of what they see on the screen. But the CV is never seen till the final stage, till the time of the interview. So even if you have very decorative CVs and all, no one ever sees it. It's all in the database. What is actually seen is the raw data, which is culled out from the resume. So these are your various applicant tracking systems. Coupled with that, there are a whole lot of them in India. Hirecraft is among the most known name, Talent Recruit and all. So your CV has to be compliant with some ATS or the other in every company. Any company will have a ATS. I'll come to more details in the ATS. Now, some people say, oh, we are senior people. What is the relevance of ATS for us? I mean, does any company go through, push through our resumes in the ATS? Very, very, I would say, debatable question, whether the company uses ATS for senior positions, CXO positions like you or not? Very difficult to say. I have seen various instances where it goes through ATS. At times they use ATS only to ensure there's no duplication of the CVs and to see that basic data is available. Later on, the recruiter says, okay, I'll go through all the 200 resumes received as against a particular job ad. I'll go through it personally. That's also possible. He may take out the information, all the CVs received against a job post and look at it personally. That's also possible. So it's very difficult to say how useful ATS is from a senior CXO point of view. I'll talk about this ATS still at more length after a few seconds. Basic thing is that as we experienced last time, most of you were overawed. Some started calling it always terrorizing software or anti-terrorist squad and whatever. Fact is only 5% of the candidates surveyed globally were ever happy with the experience they had with the ATS. No candidate ever wants to go through the ATS system. Senior, junior, mid-level, impossible. Even my own recruiters in my company, they struggle for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes trying to upload a resume on the Taleo. And this is when you are manually doing it. If it was automated, it's electronically scanning your resume, you really don't know what information it's picking up. It's like when you're applying for visa for US. Something will not be there as per what the US government wants. Again, you have to redo everything, re-enter the information. Same thing happens on the Taleo if you're Lyft or any other ATS if you're doing it manually. But when it comes to organization, they're very overawed with what is ATS. If you see that these are global surveys and these are very large global organizations who conduct surveys. 98% of Fortune 500 companies use recruitment software, applicant tracking systems. Whether they use for senior people or not, that is very, very company specific. I cannot define whether for CXOs like you, the companies will use the ATS or it goes directly to the end employer and recruiter who vets your CV. That's a very debatable and very subjective thing, depends on every company. 78% of employers say that an ATS said that recruitment technology makes great talent find forever. It's easier than ever for them to find candidates. And this is LinkedIn, the god of recruitment. 68% of recruiting professionals say that the best way to improve recruiting performance over the next few years is to invest in new recruitment technology. So we cannot, and you're all technology people or IT people, you cannot run away from the technology. Somewhere or other, it's going to impact whatever we are doing in our own careers. What is, we discussed very quickly last time, what is important in a resume? People have different understandings, but ultimately the only thing that is important in your resume is the business content. What is it that the information you're giving about you in a business language that is of interest to the employer? He's not interested in anything else, absolutely. And overall, of course, he's interested in seeing the overall appearance. It's neat, clean, easier to read. You know, you enjoy reading if your newspaper is very well organized, neatly done and all. It's not yet you're looking at colors and all in your newspaper, but you're looking at matter should be simple to read, easy in terms of fonts, text, and other things. That's what the recruiter is looking for because he's very strapped for time. He has limited time. He has pressure from the line managers to deliver CVs, arrange candidates for interviews and all. He has no time to appreciate the beauty of the resume. He just wants to get to the core of your resume. What is it that you're offering to this company? And decide whether to call you for an interview or not. That's the entire role, first stage of a resume. We'll come to the other roles of resume as we go along. So ATS, the normal general understanding globally is rejects 70 to 75% of the resumes ever fed into this. Various reasons for that. It could be one, the information physically is not available in your resume, it can't pick it up. Second thing is the formatting may be proper, may not be proper. After all, it's scanning. If you go to a photocopying center and if your original copy is very faint, obviously the photocopies will be even fainter than that and difficult to read. And this electronic scanning happening at the speed of 8 to 10 lakh resumes a day. That particular speed, it doesn't have the time to wait and understand what you're saying. Either it's there in or out. And employers also, these are all studies done by very advanced cameras, laser cameras that look at the speed of the eyelid, how fast the person is moving from one resume to another. Earlier, it used to be 6 seconds for reading a resume or glancing through a resume to decide what is to be done. Now it has gone to 7 seconds. Visual resumes, as we said, with all the color and all, has no relevance. Neither to ATS, it disrupts the flow of the ATS, nor to the person human eye. Also, we discussed last time normal length of the resume because it becomes very critical. You know, people keep on saying how big my resume must be. We have a broad thumb rule in India, and most of the time abroad also, the American CVs are normally restricted to 2 pages. Even the CEO of a company, his CV will be of 2 pages. But India, we go on the thumb rule that okay, one page for every 10 years of experience. And maximum India, we have 30, 35 years experience. So about 3 pages of resume is fine to go with. The bigger the resume, the recruiter gets overawed. Yesterday I was doing and analyzing a resume of 12 pages. Now I get overawed. How can I ever read and understand 12 pages? And I'm doing it one of maybe 2 or 3 resumes of resume writing in a day. But can you imagine a person who's reading 200, 300 resumes a day to see a 12-page resume? He'll go berserk, absolutely. And half the time, he won't even read the resume. So one has to be keeping some consideration for the adversary, as I say, who's the other side of the table. What is he looking for? What are the pressures this person is going through? And try to help him out. We'll appreciate you for that. So font size we discussed, this is again as per international research, including Microsoft, that Calibri 10 to 12 size is the ideal for resumes. If not Calibri, then maybe Arial. And they say this, in terms of all the fonts, sans serif, without any, curves and decoration, all that is the right Calibri is the right one for your resume. Times and Old Roman and all not really good. They might look good on paper, but not really relevant from your resume point of view. Cover letters, not really very clear. People still feel cover letter should be given, may not be given, should not be given. Best is why to really take a chance. Include a cover letter in your resume. You really don't know what the recruiter is thinking of. He might say 3 page ka the resume likha, ek chota आधा page ka cover letter nahi likh sakta hai. So why let him have go wild? At the most, he'll say, okay, cover letter aa gaya, let me read it. That's all. So let's err on the safer side, be more conservative. Let's put a cover letter with our resumes. Next is what we're looking at is contemporary resumes. Some resumes we find old-fashioned, some have addresses, passport numbers, passport dates, some have languages, marital status, some I know people talking about what the father was doing, mother, son, daughter, all these are irrelevant. What the recruiter is looking for is anything that helps him decide whether you're suitable for the job or not. Now, whether your father was a scientist in CSI or not, it doesn't help you in getting a job. Why talk about that? Today, things have changed. People are short of time. They are very focused and very, very clear what they want. So let's help them out with what really a recruiter is looking for. Most important thing, modern resume and compatible across all devices. Today, electronic devices have proliferated, right? From you have laptops, you have iPads, you have mobiles and all. Your resume should be structured in such a way it's easy reading in any type of device. You really don't know in what frame of mind, what mood, where the recruiter is reading your resume. Maybe he's sitting in a car and going through resumes on the way to the office. While the driver is driving his car, is going through resumes. You really don't know. And at times, the resumes do get distorted if you're reading on smaller, size screens like a mobile. So you have to think of those aspects before you really finalize your resume. And also, your resume must be compatible with other social media and other media. I'll come to later, especially LinkedIn. What's the relationship between a resume and a LinkedIn? You might say, okay, this is a study done globally by SHRM, which is one of the world's leading HR organization. And also we had put up a poll 2 weeks back and about 30,000 people had seen and about 1,500 people had responded to a poll. How do the organizations finalize senior positions all over the world and in India? And today India is at par with essentially any trend that's happening globally. After all, most people heading software companies, US are all from India. So the Indians are very quick to pick up technology. 70% of all the closures done globally and India are through social media. It could be employee referrals, it could be networking, it could be personal contacts. And when I say social media, the dominant social media in terms of recruitment and careers is LinkedIn. That commands about 65 to 70% of all the closures done globally and India at most levels, senior management and top management levels. At junior levels, maybe I would say software engineers and all 1 to 5 years experience. Yes, maybe their LinkedIn may not be all that strong and relevant. And people may be going through job sites and Naukris and monsters of the world, but at mid and senior level, invariably the people go through LinkedIn to find candidates. And 10% of the balance thing is through recruitment firms. Why LinkedIn for social media and why 70%, 65%, 70% of all positions closed through LinkedIn? We'll just come to gradually. I did an analysis. Some of you had sent me your resumes. I did an analysis, but I would still caution you, let's be very practical and realistic. Let's not get overawed by ATS. I'll tell you the reasons why. See, what happens is, ultimately, what is the ATS doing? It is doing exactly what the human being is doing, but at a much higher speed. The human being was definitely scanning through your resume in 5 to 7 seconds. He's trying to ascertain what have been your business deliverables, achievements, achievement metrics, and all that. He wants to identify certain things like keywords and other things in your resume, which organization you have worked and what have you done in those organizations, what have been your real transformations that you have delivered to the organizations. He's doing it manually, the ATS is doing electronically. That's the only difference. But ATS is also trying to ascertain your keywords and put them in the software database of companies. Same thing, the human eye is also trying to identify achievements, keywords, and trying to record in his mind and try to decide on the basis of that whether you are to be called for an interview or not. Now, I ran this 25 resumes had come. You'll be interesting. It will be very interesting for you to know that out of 25, the ATS didn't pick up the name of 3 people. Now, if it doesn't pick up the name of the person, there's very little chance of the resume going through to the next stage. Second is LinkedIn URL is not there in virtually 50% of the cases. In fact, after the last talk, I have been approached by quite a few of you, and they have said you have been inspired and you have improved your LinkedIn profile and all that, and it started giving some results and all that. Although, let me tell you that LinkedIn, even if you upgrade and update your profile, it has a certain cycle progression because it has got globally about 78, 79 crore professionals on the LinkedIn globally. So it's a cycle of 4 weeks to 6 weeks. By the time you put your any updates on your LinkedIn to the time it becomes visible to the external world, there's a progression. There's a time of 4 to 6 weeks time. So you can't say I put it today and kal se mere ko response aayega. That may or may not happen. It will take some time. But you will come to a reason why LinkedIn URL is very important on your resume. Sometimes ATS was not able to pick up your company name, the current company or previous company name. So if the data being provided to a recruiter is incomplete, he cannot really decide faithfully and honestly whether to really consider you for a job or not. He doesn't know which company you're working. Same thing might apply when a person is reading your resume at quick speed, 5 and 6 seconds per resume. If he can't find the name of the company, the way the CV is structured and all that, he might skip it off. Qualifications not come in 3 cases. Total experience not there. Sometimes showing 3 years, 5 years per person, 20 to 30 years experience. And lot of cases, 7 out of 25 are where there are major gaps in the career, what's being recorded by the ATS. 3 years gap, 5 years gap, let's say 2013 to 2018, there's nothing been visible on the ATS. But there are a lot of people who have minor gaps also, 1 month, 2 months gap. There might be certain reasons, transitions and whatever from one company to another, that's possible. But there were a lot of, I have not even counted those in this particular thing in terms of gaps, in terms of the recording, that it's not able to understand that there is continuity in your resume. Next is, we talked about LinkedIn and 70% closures happening in LinkedIn. Why it is happening? First is 90% of the recruiters today and hiring managers use LinkedIn to find candidates. The reason for this is very logical and very simple. Today, the penetration of LinkedIn in the senior managerial community, professional sales, CXOs, GMs and above, is virtually 99%. Or if I can say like I am, it could be 99.5% or whatever it is. There's no statistics available. So if 99% of my target audience is on LinkedIn, most corporates find the easy way out. They get a LinkedIn corporate account. You pay a bomb to LinkedIn, but you have, like our company, we have access to all the 99% professionals in India. All that I have to do, if I have to search for people, just put in the keywords or search criteria and filters. In a matter of seconds, I have all the people matching my search criteria. All that I have to do, if there are 50, 80, 100 names, all that I have to do is tell my HR person to go through this 50 or 80 LinkedIn profiles, identify who are the best or most suitable for our point of view, to identify 5 or 10 and start calling them for interview. Although there's a slight hurdle in LinkedIn at times because of US laws and data privacy, they do not give most of the candidates do not have their phone numbers over there. Some of them do have their phone numbers on LinkedIn, some don't have, some have email addresses. So it's a slightly longish process in terms of sending across emails or in-mails and other things. But quite a few times we have been able to manage over that and identified some people, called up some people, and if we are lucky enough and some senior candidates available, we also had telephonic or Zoom interviews within the same day. Within 6 to 8 hours, we have been able to interview candidates. Unlike the traditional method where you put an ad on some job site, wait for 10, 15 days time, wait for people to respond. After that, you might tell the HR guy to go through the resumes, identify who are the 5 or 10 top people matching the requirement. After that also, if he gets the best out of the lot responded, 60, 100, 200 or whatever number have responded, those 5 or 10 people would have anyway been in my database from day one. I don't have to go through this circus and cycle of putting ads and all that. And then in any case, I know these people with 99% penetration, all of them would be in my database. Maybe 1% may not be there, but if he's not tuned to what's the modern way of working and LinkedIn, I don't think I need that person in my company. That is the logic most people, most organizations use. So it's very easy that I have access to 99%, and within a matter of few seconds, I am able to approach all of them. Because of which, even today, yesterday, I was talking to some of your friends. They're saying, "मैंने तो apply किया है, कुछ result नहीं आया." That is one aspect. The second thing is, half the time I know there's a position closed in this company, but I never knew. I never saw any job ad and all. See, if I have access to 99% of the database of professionals, I don't need to put an ad in any job site to really add to my workload and numbers. Second thing, for strategic reasons, I may not want to announce that I'm setting up a new organization or I'm looking for a new CIO or CEO. I don't want the competition to have head start and heads up on whatever I'm doing. So because of which, for even strategic reasons, I may not put an ad in any of the job site and still get the best people available. And the advantage of going through the LinkedIn route and LinkedIn database is I'm first identifying the best people, the most fit people for my job, and then approaching them. Unlike in an ad, I'm responding or as a reaction to people who have applied to my ad. Whether they are the best people, the most fit people for my job, that's a question mark. It may not be the best people. So even in terms of speed and quality, I think it works much better in LinkedIn. Not that I'm a brand ambassador of LinkedIn, no way. But if you have to look for anything on Google or search for anything, Google is the only thing. Same thing today, if a person has to have some, I would say, connection with the professional world and career, LinkedIn is the only option. There might be some Chinese sites, I don't know, but LinkedIn is the only obvious choice that is available for anyone in the world. So that's why LinkedIn is more important than ever in building your personal brand and your career. And in fact, some of you have also mentioned that you were not aware of the power of LinkedIn. Only now that you started realizing what is the power of LinkedIn. You should really use LinkedIn as your online resume. A lot of people, if you're not looking for a job, you can put very, I would say, high-flying words in your LinkedIn summary and all that. That is to create a own personal, professional brand. But if you are looking for a job, you have to be more realistic and put really words and relevant information, which will help you to get a job. And because LinkedIn is a global access platform, anyone can look at your LinkedIn profile from anyone, anywhere in the world, 24/7 without your permission. The probability of people going through a LinkedIn profile and evaluating you for potential jobs in their companies is multiple times the probability of you sending your CVs. You might know 4 or 5 companies and send your CV over there. Unlike that, through LinkedIn, it's possible there might be 50, 100 people might be looking at your LinkedIn profile. And as the earlier pie chart showed, 70% of all the closures happen through LinkedIn versus 20% through any job site. So in any case, that gives a clear indication that LinkedIn is potent and more powerful, at least 3 to 4 times compared to a normal traditional job site way of doing your job search. Why LinkedIn is so popular, I already said 75 crore professionals globally. Some small statistics about LinkedIn. The tagline, the most important part of your LinkedIn profile is your headline, which is a limit now of 220 characters. Earlier, it used to be 120. Progressively, they are increasing it. Now it is 220. Summary section, which some of the people use only 4 or 5 lines, as we had seen last time. This is a place where the recruiter spends 60 to 70% of time he spends on your LinkedIn profile. The more time and more information and more relevant information you give on that summary section of your LinkedIn profile, the higher is engaged in your own candidature and the higher the probability of you getting an interview call. What LinkedIn does is, why I said in the beginning 13 out of 25 of the CVs I went through didn't have a LinkedIn URL. The normal process employer follows is, first he'll quickly go through your resume. If it's interesting, he'll then go to LinkedIn to understand what you're talking about yourself to the world. This 2600 characters in about become very, very important. And secondly, it is not only a summarized resume, that 2600 characters, but LinkedIn being a social media, you're supposed to be talking about your personality aspects. What are your behavioral strengths? What are your professional soft skills strengths in terms of what type of leader are you? How is your interpersonal relationship? What are you passionate about? How are you upskilling yourself? These are the aspects which the person wants to understand and evaluate before calling you for an interview. Because he wants to do a 360-degree understanding of you and your capabilities before deciding to call you for an interview. And that's why LinkedIn becomes very, very important from his own point of view. LinkedIn, you can be part of maximum 100 groups. You can become have 30,000 direct connections. Followers can be n number. There's unlimited. People like Bill Gates and Narendra Modi have several crore followers. So ultimately, you might reach a glass ceiling of 30,000 followers because US laws and LinkedIn says that you cannot be friend with more than 30,000 people. Like Facebook, you might have 2,000 friends, but when it actually comes to, you don't really have one friend. So same thing over there. LinkedIn feels if you want to do justice and network with people, you can't do justice in networking more than 30,000 people. That's their logic. So there's a limit to which you can increase your connections on LinkedIn, but you can use it in other ways to approach a wider audience. Planning for career success, your LinkedIn profile, as we said, is your online resume. You must build powerful resume and LinkedIn documents. Every time you apply for a job, you must customize your job to the job description. Even if, supposing hypothetically, you're applying for a job to Google or Microsoft, two great global multinational organizations, the job description for a similar position will be different. So you must customize your resume. It's not your resume one size fits all. It will go for every type of organization. No, even the same industry, same similar organizations, the JD will be different. You must customize it. After all, the ATS is picking up the keywords which you have put over there in your resume, matching it with the keywords which are there in the job description. And most of the time, the companies have a score, cutoff score. They say 85% match, 90% match. Generally, 80% above match is considered to be good enough for then the resume to be seen by a human eye. So you must try to customize and see that whatever the keywords being used in the job description are also being reflected in the resume. And you must then use LinkedIn to build a very, very strong for professional brand equity. I'll just come to that. And ultimately, this section, this we ended last time. If you want to really grow as a professional, your network is your network. The more powerful, the more potent, the more quality network you have, the better is your ultimate, I would say, gain in terms of name, fame, achievement, and other things. Now we come to the next session, which will really start now. First is after resume. Yes, you have got a resume, you have got a LinkedIn. Now, what do you want to do with that? First of all, you really have to think it over whether you are looking for a job or not. You, as I said, you can have a resume, you may not be looking for a job. If you're looking for a job, you must go about the process very systematically, as we are talking about the IT roadmap. You must prepare first type of job you're looking for. That's coming from your career planning, which we started in the beginning. You have a career plan, you have a goal, you are at a certain level in your organization. Now the next level falls automatically, it will come through because you have a career plan, total progression. So based on your career plan and the type next level you want to go to, you can easily identify who are your potential organizations and whatever positions you're really looking for. You must work out a consistent schedule for applying for jobs. It's not very easy in today's world, neither in India or USA. You apply for one job, you get it, no way. You may have to apply for 30 jobs, 50 jobs to get the right break. Ultimately, the break will come, but you need to be very patient, systematic, and go on identifying the right type of job and applying. There's no sense applying 30 jobs for the heck of it. Try to match the job description, try to see how much you are actually done or matching with the requirements of the job, and then apply. That's a more sensible way of doing it, because otherwise it's very likely the ATS might approve your resume because it has all the keywords, but the human eye will reject it because you don't have the relevant experience. So resume, when it comes to scan all the job sites, scan on jobs on the LinkedIn and all company websites, try to talk to recruitment consultants, identify what opportunities are going in the market. As I said, customize your resume to be in sync with the job description. You must keep on polishing your resume and updating it on a very regular basis. Yes, it's not that every day a job or your title will change and all that, but at least periodically, every 6 months, 1 year, try to update your resume. There are a lot of things may have changed in your assignments, some minor changes in roles. Let it be a very up-to-date and contemporary resume at any instant of time. When it comes to LinkedIn, as we said, 70% of closures happen through LinkedIn. You must make a conscious attempt to intelligently and very selectively increase your connections. It's not necessary when I say 30,000, you must have all software engineers and all as your connection. No, it should be at least at a peer group level, if not your seniors, your aspirational level, the role model you want to be, the type of people you want to interact with, the type of organizations, the CEOs, the MDs, or heads of HR of the organizations, recruitment firms, heads of recruitment firms. You should collectively and very, very selectively start establishing personal contacts and connection with them. As they say in Hindi, jo dikhta hai, bikta hai. If there's some assignment going somewhere, If he remembers he's your connection, he might approach you faster. So you must build also, secondly, one is connection, second is build visibility. You can build visibility in a number of ways in LinkedIn. Through post, you can post articles, something you've done in an organization, some thought you have had, why not share it with your peer community? You can comment on some articles or blogs written or posts written by someone in your particular group or somewhere else. The more you start contributing, the more you become visible and the more you start attracting attention of potential employers. Today, if, as we said, easy for me to just identify through my database who are the right people and all. What they do after that, what my HR person does, he'll go through the LinkedIn profiles of each of them to see what they're doing, how active are they in the groups. What I'm looking for in my company is really at a senior level, a thought leader. Yes, someone who has installed infrastructure, ITL, data centers, and all is fine. But what type of his mental makeup, what type of thought leader is he? How is he able to influence the people? These are the information I can get from his posts, his blogs, his the participation in various groups. Like when you passed out in your engineering, you may have had when you're looking for jobs in your campus placement, group discussions. Why is a group discussion? Because they want to know what is your thought process, how are you thinking vis-a-vis your contemporaries. So that's what's happening over here in the groups of LinkedIn. People are observing you, people are seeing what are you doing, how are you contributing and all that, and mapping you out. You must become a member of relevant groups. Last thing what we discussed over the last time was LinkedIn at the bottom has this facility of you getting recommendations and you giving recommendations. Very important. Your role is to get recommendation. Yes, it's not easy to request someone for recommendation. At the same time, if you are professional and you want to be a leader, you have to also give recommendation. Some junior might approach you, you must give a recommendation to that person. And LinkedIn algorithms are very, very powerful. They keep on evaluating you continuously. Even your boss may not evaluate you so consistently as LinkedIn evaluating you. What type of recommendation you're giving, how many recommendations you're given, how many recommendations have you received. It keeps on measuring every profile worldwide on a periodic basis and trying to rate the profile. So with the result, when any employer is looking for candidates, the results that come on top of search rankings are one, as we discussed last time, those who have all-star ratings. And secondly, internal algorithms evaluate how much of a fit you are for the particular job and then give your details to the employer. It's not that everyone straight mapping will go through into the search results. No, it has internal algorithms which decide who are the people to be put up over there. So you need to be very prominent, visible, contributing to the community for you to really stand out and your LinkedIn profile to be identified by professional recruiters and corporate recruiters. What are the employers' concerns? Why is this almost so much fuss about ATS and other things? McKinsey coined this term many years back, war for talent. I would still say the war for talent still continues. Last 15, 20 years, nothing has changed. Today, great candidates are scarce, absolutely. As Narayana Murthy says, the engineers passing out of institutes, not even 20% of them are employable today. So we might have numbers in India, but the quality is very, very rare. And we keep on saying, okay, there's such a huge shortage of talent and all that. Why am I not getting interview calls? If people need and there's such a shortage, why am I not getting any interview call is obviously the right question. The reasons are multiple. One, okay, look at the psyche of the recruiter. Unlike olden days when you had a radio, the life of radio was 30 years, 40 years. Then it came Walkman, Sony Walkman. Today, the life cycle of a product and service is shrinking. It's maybe 6 months, 1 year. Most of the companies like Apple and all releasing products, upgraded products every 6 months and 1 year to go on sustaining demand and market. Because of which the recruitment team and HR in most companies are under tremendous pressures because even organizations, the board, there's a lot of pressure into monetizing their entire new products and services at very fast pace because the supply chain cycle and the entire life cycle of product is very, very limited, 6 months and 1 year. So everything has to be compressed in that 6 months, 1 year time. That's why the pressure. Until you have people, they can't work on projects. If you can't work on projects, you can't deliver, and the competition takes over. So the pressure on a recruiter is extremely high. One is he has to deliver the numbers, and given that there's a big shortage of good talent in the country, he's really racking his brains trying to get the right people. At the same time, the cost of a wrong hire is among us, absolutely. And more senior you are, the cost is extremely high. At senior level, CEO level, CXO levels, it could be multiple times your annual salary. If you're getting a salary of 1 crore, the cost of a wrong person taken in a company could be 5 and 10 crores. Today, no company can afford to have such, lackadaisical approach and such, I would say, wrong decision. Although a lot of employees keep on saying, yes, we have made wrong decision and all that. But then, as they say, cut short your losses, immediately they take corrective action. But very high probability that all the recruiters are very scared something wrong goes in the selection of the person. It could set back the company in terms of the money, in terms of time, in terms of plans, in terms of if someone is wrong is taken and you ask him to go or he leaves, it could create a lot of problems in the stock market. Is the reputation of the companies at stake and all that. So that's why recruiters more at the senior level are very, very cautious about the type of people they take. And recruiting then becomes a very, very risky business. There's a lot at stake. That's why recruiters will use everything in their armory to ensure the quality of hire is good. They'll have 360 degrees interviews, competency-based interviews, behavioral interviews, reference check, background check. Background check means they go to even to your town and village, to your school to find out whether when you said you studied in so-and-so Vidyalaya, actually did you study over there or not? Whether you had any past criminal record or not, they go through a lot of background checks, and the background check companies charge a bomb to really give you that information. The companies go to extreme steps to see that they take the right person. Even after that, at times they make mistakes, but that is life. You can't help it out. They go through psychometric tests, psychologists trying to assess your mind, how good your mind is, how capable you are, and all that. There's a lot of, I would say, background work that goes on when they hire a senior level person. And last is medical check. Today, the stresses are so high, they want to see that you survive through the whole system. It's like running on a treadmill or a stress mill. Absolutely. So they want to see that you can sustain those type of pressures, which most organizations now are having if they are to run their companies. What is the employer looking for really? He's looking for how fit you are for that company and how long you will last in that company. They don't want people who are passengers, they'll get into a train, next station they get, don't know. It's a long-term commitment that they are looking for really. So he wants to know what you can do for the company and how do you fit into the company. Fit in terms of your professional skills, your achievements, how you have transformed your earlier organizations, your soft skills, how good your interpersonal relationship is, how do you interact, how whatever team leader you are. These are the things that he's looking for to really decide whether to think of even making an offer to you. Also, he's looking at in terms of overall attitude. What he's looking for people who have a good and positive attitude, not arrogant people, not sadhus or kadus or whatever it is, because they want you to gel well with the organization. The organization might have 10,000, 15,000 people, and if you're joining as a CIO or senior person, so you have to be respected and you have to work with the entire diverse team. They want to see the fitment. How do you exactly fit with the type of people that are there in that organization? Also, they do a lot of, I would say, background work in terms of your growability. It's not that they're taking you for a particular position where you will be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. They have already mapped it out because they are mentally, internally, they may not communicate with you, but already looking at growth path for the person, career plan for the person even before the interview happens. So you need to be serious about the job. He's looking for the best person. He finds it very difficult getting, at times it takes 6 months or 1 year to even find the right candidate. People are willing to wait for the right candidate. But when he gets it, he's excited because yes, like they say, Pepsi, you're the right choice. He is waiting to find the right partner for his company. You have a lot of work to do before you go for an interview. You must be very serious. There's no point attending interviews for the sake of it. And it is a family decision. So many times we have come across senior people getting jobs and then they're saying, no, my wife doesn't want to move. My daughter is studying in this college. We cannot move. You're a mature person. You're professional. You're supposed to be running a company, 500 crores, 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores. At last stage, when it comes to finalizing an offer, you're saying, no, my daughter, my wife, this is not acceptable. You must be professional because the world is very small. Anything that you do gets reflected. All the recruiters, all the employers are in touch with each other. They might be competitors in the field, but at the back, at times they are in touch with each other, exchanging notes, recruitment firms exchanging notes about candidates and all that. So you might say that, I got this job, I didn't accept it, but you are creating a negative history about yourself. At time, it might boomerang. It may or may not if you're lucky, but at times it might boomerang. So better be careful, be serious about the type of job you are applying for, study the job description, understand how it matches with your own resume, research the company, identify what are the company, what are the plans, what are the financials, who are the people, what are the products, understand, try to identify links with the potential interviewer, try to understand his psyche, what is his mental makeup is, what has been his qualification, what has been his achievements and all that. Try to identify friends, others, contacts in the company through LinkedIn, through Glassdoor. A lot of sites are available now. So idea is that you should be totally prepared before you go for the interview. We come across so many cases, CXO, CEOs have a casual walk for the interview. They just go there without prepared. When you asked, even senior people I've seen, CEO level, I didn't know what the job was. No one told me that. I mean, that's not an excuse you can give. You're a senior person. This is serious business. They're talking about salary of 1 crore, 5 crore. You're not even very serious about it. We have seen candidates coming in t-shirts for CXO level interviews. Not accepted. This is a very sanctimonious thing, very professional. You have to reflect that image of being a professional. You might be overdressed for the occasion, acceptable, but you cannot be absolutely wearing green t-shirts and going for the interview, not acceptable. And you must be very meticulous. Check out all the details, carry whatever you want to carry, resumes, detailed salary slips, appointment letters, certificates, everything. It's serious business. You just can't walk in with your hands in your trouser pockets and say, I've landed for the interview. You must check it out about the interview, about the company, even in terms of, I would say, how much time will it take you to reach the location, whether there's a parking issue or not, whether there's traffic jams and all. You cannot ring up and tell the employer, sorry, I'm stuck in a traffic jam, I cannot reach. That doesn't create a good impression. Yes, there's a shortage of good talent in the world, but at least you should create the right image about yourself. Today's world, Zoom and video interviewing has become popular more so because of COVID. So you must have a proper dress code for the particular interview that you're talking about. Prefix whatever you're going to do, the location in your room, the computer, set it up properly, and all the ambience, the sound. At times when you're on the, I would say, video and calling and all, you see people moving in the background and all, maid servants and all, that doesn't, or cupboards open, that doesn't give a great impression about you. You must create the right impression, whether you get the job or not, immaterial. You must demonstrate to the company, be prepared. Why have you applied for the job? Sometimes they might ask you such questions, but you must internally have thought over it. Why are you applying for the job? Why should you be hired? You must do the analysis, do benchmarking of potential other applicants and try to understand why and convince the employer why are you the best person for the job. After all, he has a choice of 10, 15 people. He wants to take the best of what is available. Do a lot of research as we discuss about the company, what are the projects, where they are planning to put you, how you can contribute in those projects and all that. What is it that you're looking for in that particular company in terms of even professional challenges, whatever exciting jobs you're looking for. Be totally prepared. Take a lot of information, even notice period. So many times candidates have been asked, what's your notice period? Oh, I have not even seen the appointment letter. I think it is 1 month. No, maybe it might be 3 months. Be prepared and go. After all, it's serious business. He's spending his half an hour, 1 hour with you. And today, interviews are very elongated. They don't have multiple interviews, 5 or 10 rounds. But whatever rounds is there, 1 or 2 rounds, if there's someone is very interesting, they spend 1.5, 2 hours. That's the time you really have to come across and convey your entire architecture, your entire strengths, your achievements, and give the impression you are well prepared and very methodical. These are things that create a lot of brownie points for you and give you a lot of positive, I would say, impression about you. Also, you should be prepared to know what type of information you want to ask the other person. At the end of an interview, people ask, do you want to ask anything? You will ask some, very unrelated questions. No, you must have analyzed the job, analyzed the people, the company, ask about serious questions related to your career and the company. At times, we have seen people asking, okay, do you have 5-day week or not? It looks silly, absolutely. Today, you are expected to work 24/7 all the days of the week. You cannot ask a person whether you do have Saturday, Sunday off or not. Oh, I would like to have an off on these days. Sorry. These are not things that matter at senior levels. You have to be very, very serious. These are some of the questions which have been typically asked, but you need to be prepared in advance for that. As we touched upon some of them, tell me about yourself. Why should we hire? We have touched upon all these questions. Why do you want to leave your organization? People say better prospects. It doesn't mean anything. What is better prospects? You must do an intelligent analysis about yourself, a SWOT analysis of the company that you're applying for. See how you're mapping and how you're fitting in with the company, and then give a very intelligent answer. You can't say, I'm leaving for better prospects, for growth in salary. What does that mean? Nothing, absolutely. No one is ever going to give you a job if you say, I'm looking for a higher salary. Salary is the last thing that comes on the mind of a recruiter. First thing he wants to know whether you're right for the particular job or not. Salary comes much later. Okay, we'll come to something. How do you answer gaps in your resume? And as I told you, most important question. The only 2 questions most important are, first they say, tell me about yourself. This is really the icebreaker. You should use that opportunity to go to town, talking about you and your achievements on how you fit in with the company's job. This is your real opportunity. Idea is, okay, some of you feel that usne to CV padha hi nahi hai, he wants to now buy time and wants to know what I have done and all that. No, these are intelligent questions that deliberately asked. Want to have an icebreaker to set a relationship, because there's no question or answer over there. It's not a cross examination. He's giving you opportunity to talk about yourself. Why don't you talk about it properly and talk about your achievements, your how you fit in the culture of the organization, what are you looking for in life, how what are your goals in life. Give a, I would say, debriefing to the potential employer in terms of your own career prospects. He'll respect you for that. And the last question, do you have any questions for us? You must have one or two very intelligent questions related to the company and job to ask for, and not questions about what are the office timings and whether holidays are not. And I'm telling you, I'm not talking about junior people, even senior people ask these questions. As we discussed, when it comes to salary negotiation, you must do your homework very thoroughly. Most people don't know what their salaries are. Then later on they realize, "Arey, mujhe to wo bhi mil raha tha. I was getting a free holiday to Europe once in a year. My daughter's education was free." You must do all the calculations. What are visible perks, invisible perks, quantifiable perks, non-quantifiable? You get a clubhouse, you get some admission, you get some vacation wherever. You must quantify that and be very clear what your current salary is. On top of that, you must be very clear where are you going to go in your own company, current company. You cannot just say, okay, today I'm getting 60 lakhs and you land up over there. And then they give you an offer. Then you say, no, I thought my company, in any case, this is a salary I'll get next year. So why should I join you? You have not done your homework. You're not giving a great impression about yourself. Do all the analysis. Today I'm getting 60 lakhs. My next appraisal is March. I might get another 15-20%. My salary is 70 lakhs. To have a logical reason, people will be willing to listen to you and accept it. You cannot talk in the air and say, I'm getting 60, so I'm expecting 19 more. And you must know your current market value. Even if you're getting 60, is it good? Is it low? Is it bad? There are today so many channels you have of assessing your market value. There is Glassdoor that is there. The friends are there. Recruitment companies are there. We advise a lot of candidates and benchmark on their behalf what would be the good market salary for them, guide them, and we help them negotiate the salaries with their prospective employers. Before you go for the interview, you really don't know. Even the first round of interview, you might be asked this question: what is your salary expectation? You must have a clear answer. What, and before that, you must have done your homework. What is it that you are currently getting? If you're getting ESOPs, what is the level of ESOPs? Are they vested? Are you entitled? When are you going to get it? What's the market value? When it will be encashed? You must have all those answers. Maybe some company startups give you ESOPs and does zero value. You can't say I'm entitled to these ESOPs. No way. You must have realistic quantification of your entire CTC as of date before you go to the organization. Try to do a prior research in terms of finding out what that organization can pay for that particular role. These are the information you must definitely have before you even reach for the interview. Negotiation is really an art and a science. As I say, there used to be a book, the other guy blinked. Both are smart people. The recruiter is smart and you are smart. Both want to outsmart each other. The recruiter will never tell you his budget. You don't want to say what type of salary you are expecting. But somewhere you have to really have some situation where both of them reveal the cards. So you have to play your cards well. It's a question of supply and demand. You must know the value you bring to the organization. What is it that niche? The more niche the position, the higher the salary that is offered and higher the percentage growth also. There are people who get 50 and 100% increase on even 1 and 2 crore salaries because what they offer to the company is something very rare and they can command their price. It's a question of supply and demand. If what you're offering is a vanilla skill, he'll say, okay, 10% increase, 15% increase. At times I have known people, they say, okay, same salary. You are coming for this particular brand, you're coming to organization for a brand. So this is really negotiating is the art of entire, I would say, recruitment process. There are a lot of organizations who are specialists in compensation and benefits, guiding you on what your compensation is and how you can negotiate your compensation to your maximum advantage. It is a skill and it is an art, and a lot of, I would say, work has gone into it. Also, money is not everything. You might say, I want 30%, my friend got 30% increase. You have to look at the company, the value it brings, the credibility of the company, the type of projects you're having, the long-term growth prospects you're having. You must have a clue into all that and then take a very mature decision whether 15% or 30% or 50% is good for you when you are making that transition to the next company. Also, when you're looking at negotiating salary, be a good judge like poker. When you play poker, you have to see the person, his face, his reaction, what is he doing. Most of the time, HR people have some 10-15% up their sleeve. They won't reveal all the cards from day one. They want to know what you are looking at, what you're doing. After all, they are in business. They're not also doing charity. Yes, they want to pay you market value, but if they can get away with 60 lakhs, why should they give you 65 lakhs? It's his business, it's his cost, it's his budget. But at the same time, if he finds you are rare, and as I have written over here, walkaway price, he wants to ascertain from you what is your walkaway price. At what price you'll say, forget it, I don't want your job. He wants to take you to that and then decide what to offer you. You must be very clear how much this company needs you, what is the real value you're bringing to that company, what are the skills you're bringing in, and then go for the negotiation part. Normal. And one more guideline is, if the company actually gives you the salary you're asking for, you might ask for 50% and the company says, okay, done, we are giving 50%. At that stage, you cannot go back and say, nahi, nahi, 50 nahi chahiye, mujhe 60 chahiye, or take that offer of 50% and go to the next company next door and say, yahan to mujhe 50 mil raha hai percent, how much I will know. That is not professionalism. That's what why we Indians are not very popular in international markets. We'll go to a shop, we'll negotiate, find a shopkeeper gives you exactly what you want for that particular system. You will say, wait, I'll go to the next shop and find out what they're offering. Not acceptable. You must be professional. If you have put your neck in the noose, you have gone to this company, interviewed once or twice, you have got a certain salary, please then accept the salary. Be a professional. Because otherwise word goes on very, very fast. Some do's or don'ts, what we have discussed most of the time, be serious about the process and do research. Don't attend the interview if you're not interested. Why do you want to waste someone else's time? You may have extra time, but please respect the time of a recruiter. Prepare well, be punctual. We have discussed most of it. Play your cards well, the walkaway price, as I said. First stage, don't inquire about salary, first round, how much are you willing to offer or not. Keep it for after you've cleared one or two rounds. That's the time things become mature. The recruiter is also interested in you. Then he can reveal his cards, not in the first day and first interview itself. Instead, as I said, ask really intelligent questions about the company, the job, the challenges the company is facing, what expectation they have from this particular job from you, what do they want you to do when perform, what are the growth plans they have for you. These are real questions you should be asking them, when they ask you, do you have any question to ask? These are things that shows that you have taken a lot of interest in the company, you have analyzed the company, and now you are going to the next level. After the interview, please send a very polite thank you mail to the interviewer. He'll be happy. And also it reaffirms that you are interested in a job and you're excited about the assignment. Very, very important. Also, happens after all I've said, last 45, 50 minutes. Today's time, of course, it's all online interviewing. I have known candidates being rejected after 10 and 12 rounds of interviews, including going to USA, being interviewed by whatever CEOs, VPs of that organization, and still getting rejected for whatever reasons. Let's not get into it. This also happens. This is life. This is recruitment all about. Suddenly position go on hold, and you'll find the employer doesn't answer your question, the recruiter doesn't answer your question, everything is gone berserk. But at the same time, it also happens at the candidate's end. We have seen it personally last 3 or 6 months. On the 89th day, why I'm saying 89 because normal 3 months in notice period, 90th day the person is supposed to be joining, on 91st, in 89th day stops receiving your calls. And this candidate is gone. And we have suffered also. Okay, we as recruiters suffer, it's fine. Companies' entire plans go for a toss. They have taken a senior person at a director level. They had certain plans based on his joining on the particular date. He's supposed to joining on 1st of June. On 30th May, his phone doesn't ring up. 31st May, the recruiter calls him 20 times. Finally, he picks up and says, sorry, I don't think I'm joining. The entire structure collapses. So what have you achieved? Why couldn't you have been a professional gentleman, indicated 10 days, 30 days, 6 months, 3 months in advance that, okay, I'm sorry, I have thought it over, I'm not interested anymore, I've got some other opportunity, I'm not. Let's at least be brave enough and reveal to the potential employer so that other companies' own plans do not go for a toss. And it's a small world. Today that recruiter is there and you have told him, or on the 90th day told him you're not interested for a job. Tomorrow he might be in some other company, he might be interested in that job. I'm sure he'll remember you and your unprofessional behavior. So idea is world is small. At least maintain relationships, even if it is a very bitter, I would say, pill to swallow or bite the bullet. You have to come to terms and say 1 month, 2 months. The more advanced information you give to the potential employer, the better it is that, okay, sorry, I'm not able to join. I wish you all the best. I hope you get someone good. That will create a very positive mileage for you. The recruiter will remember you his whole life. It's nothing negative. Things happen like that. But at least you're giving them enough time, enough breathing time to make alternate arrangements. Because if they are taking a senior person, they cannot have a backup They have to wait for another 2 or 3 months to, and possibly the other guy has already got another job and gone off. So he may not have ready backups immediately. The more time you give to your potential employer, the better it is for you and for your own image in the market. Challenges today are there. Ageism, yes, some people are worried whether there's a market after 55, 60 years age. Uh, I would feel there's a market for everyone. As Shah Rukh Khan's one movie was there, somewhere someone is there, mere liye banaya hua tha. It's a question of finding out your right employer. There will be people who value your experience. Even we have created resumes who fortunately have gone off and got second careers also at the age of 59 and 60. There is a market, there is a place available for everyone. It's your research, how you go about meticulously searching for that type of a potential employer that will differentiate you and your success. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting at home at the age of 55, 58 and saying, "Koi market hi nahi hai." Today, companies are taking 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds as CEOs. But there's a market somewhere. You have to tap the right company, right industry. There is always a market until the age of 60, 65. Then you can go into consultancy and other things. Diversity, there are a lot of people with diverse backgrounds. There are markets available. Yes, there might be reasons why you might be having gaps in your career, sabbaticals and all. If you have good reason, if you're on a sabbatical, let's be honest, 5 or 10 years back, people lost their jobs and they used to feel very humiliated and all. They pick up the last, when the recession hit 2007-8, people used to take their briefcases, go and sit in the mall for the full day and go home, show the neighbors that I'm working and all. It became a bit of a, I would say, ego issue that I'm without a job. Today, it's a part of life. Everywhere, because of COVID, because of recession, all people are losing jobs. There's nothing to be really, I would say, embarrassed about. This is life. But the most important thing is to build back the life to normalcy, bring it back. It might take 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Talk to good people, well-wishers, friends, consultants. Bring back the thing in your career back to track. Yes, what the next recruiter will want to know is that 6 months or 1 year sabbatical or you're without a job, what you did in that period is more important. Did you just sit at home and do nothing or use the time, I would say, usefully upskilling yourself, registering for some certification programs and other things? That has more value. So even if you are without a job for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, please be sure that you're properly engaged, utilizing the time to upgrade yourself, upskill yourself. Also, there are ways and means of identifying how to manage if you're underperforming or if you cannot get along with your boss or you're getting below market salary. There are people who say, no, right now I've been paid low by my company, so I want a 50% increase in your company. That's not logic. You have to justify why you want. If you're getting 30 lakhs and you feel your market price is 60 lakhs, you should justify why 60 lakhs is your worth and why the company should pay you 60 lakhs. You cannot say just because my company is underpaying me 30 lakhs, now I want to come at par with the competitive market rates, I must get 60 lakhs. There's no logic. There are people I know who say, no, my family is into a bit of a difficulty. I have old parents to manage, so I want a salary of 60 lakhs. And companies are not so emotional. They are running businesses. They will give you the money they feel your market value is and what you deserve. Whether you have family problems or you're underpaid is not their concern. They would be keen on knowing why you're underpaid. Whether your real worth is 50 lakhs, 45 lakhs, 60 lakhs, it's for them to decide. And they are the masters at the game. They can decide and give you a fair deal. Whether you take it or not, that is your lookout. But you can't say, I'm underpaid, so I must get double salary this time. No. Then why did you continue in your previous company? If you're underpaid, you should have looked for another job. Or you should have negotiated with your earlier employer. You can't put all the burden on me to compensate you now. So, and lastly, there will be rejections. Everyone cannot get a job. For any job, there will be 5 takers, 10 takers. There may be rejection, but you have to learn how to live. There are so many people who have been rejected. Even Amitabh Bachchan, we started off with so many employments he tried, he did not succeed, 10, 15 of them. And finally, he succeeded and he is where he is today. So you cannot afford to lose heart. You must be positive, have confidence, have patience. Don't lose hope. There, as I said, like Shah Rukh Khan, there's always someone somewhere. And as they say in English, it's not over till it is over. So you have to keep your hopes high, keep your efforts high, and have that continuous perseverance to get the great assignment that you're looking for. Lastly, back to the employer. Employers are very smart cookies. They know what they want. They're not in charity. They're in business. He is trying to judge you how good you are going to be for him and his organization, how you are going to fit into his organization. And what he wants is expecting absolute frankness, transparency, and honesty in your interactions. If you are gone and already have 2 jobs up your sleeve, at least reveal to him, I've got some jobs and this I'm come for a better job. You cannot just go there and after he gives you a job, 15 days later he gives you the final interview. Say, no, I already have an offer. They were offering so much. Your salary is much lower than what they. You have lost everyone's time and patience. If you have an offer or if you have certain concerns about the company or in terms of salary, please be upfront and indicate to him. He'll appreciate you for that. If he can make up, if you're a great talent and he needs you very badly, he will accept some of your shortcomings. But you cannot not be transparent and you are translucent, you don't communicate anything. And last minute you drop a bombshell, I already have an offer, I'm not joining you. That sets back everyone a long time. And when, as I said, they want to discuss on professional terms and career matters, nothing emotional, nothing personal and other things. Absolutely career-wise, how do you fit into organization? And this is what we're offering. This is a total, I would say, chess or transaction. Absolutely. They don't get carried away by emotions that whether you're from a difficult background and you need the job urgently or without a job. No. He'll give you a job if you deserve it and if he has a vacancy for that. And they're always suspicious of people who are over eager, politely, they'll keep on calling up every 2 days, 3 days, what happened about my application. You have to have that game of poker, I said, a patience. You have to show that, okay, it's an equal relationship. You need the company as much as the company needs you. The moment you start revealing your cards that you are desperate, the battle is gone. You are lost it totally. As I said, last line, employers are willing to go out to accommodate great talent. They'll go to any corner of the world to find you if you have that talent. We have placed one candidate 2 years back, and that was for an international BPO in healthcare. The day she got an offer was the day she got a gold medal from Barack Obama. The client went over there to Chicago, to her home city, and made an offer to her. So if you are great, employers will find you wherever you are now. So you have to prove your mettle. You might be great for certain types of companies. Focus on those companies where your value is realized. There's no point everyone applying to Microsoft and Googles of the world. They may not even look at you. Look at the companies where you are made for each other and try to make a pitch. I'm sure they'll be happy to recruit you. So again, we end. Be positive, have confidence. There will always be something somewhere for you. It's not over till it is over. So wish you all a great career and a big thank you from me and my team Impact. I think I overshot my time slightly, 10, 15 minutes, but I hope it was something that was useful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Prakash. That was a very, very illuminating session. I think people would have found it very useful. I definitely did. I don't think I will recap what you said because a lot of the messaging there is also what we expect from people when we interview them. And what is frustrating for us when we interview the candidates obviously would be frustrating for somebody else also. I really wish there should be some section on LinkedIn which says this person did not join at the last minute, so that that whole.
In fact, if I can, sorry, please complete.
I mean, so that visibility also gets created.
I have a feeling, I'm not very tuned into it. In USA, if the employer is giving you an appointment letter, it is treated as a legal contract. If you violate it, you don't join on the date, they can sue you by millions of dollars. Whereas India, we take appointment letters and just put it in the dustbin. Today, there has been a lot of talk in our association, even Recruiters Association, of blacklisting candidates who have let down companies and ditched companies. Up till now, we have not been able to build a framework for that. But definitely that consciousness is there amongst even recruitment firms and employers to have a confidential website where you reveal the names of the people, candidates who have let you down at the last minute.
A great, initiative. I think I will pick up questions on which have already been put on the chat windows. First of all, I would like to start with a question of my own. I'm assuming after such sessions, you get a bunch of connection requests. You said you have to be selective about who you reach out to. I'm assuming the same works when somebody reaches out to you. How are you selective about the requests you get? How do you decide which to accept, which not to accept?
Very, very selective. I have reached that glass ceiling of 30,000 3-4 years back. So most of the time I request people to follow me rather than have a connection. But there's a churn. I keep on then, every few weeks or so, look at people who are not very, very now in tune with what I'm doing currently and start deconnecting with them and adding new people. This is part of life. If I have to add new people, I have to remove some old people. This is nature. You can't have everything in life. So I do try to do a churn and start, deconnecting people who I don't think now are fitting into my frame of mind, of my activities. They might have been suitable, good connections 1 or 2 years back, but today they are not fitting into my scheme of things. But I'm very
Interesting.
selective and look at people who are good. I'll be great to be aligned with, because see, if you have a connection, you really have to live up to the expectation. People send me messages. It's your responsibility to reply to them. I get a message at 12 in the night, 1 in the night. Okay, I may not reply at that time, but next morning, I make it a point to reply 100% to all the messages. So if you are having a large connection base, your responsibility also goes up. After all, LinkedIn is a networking site. Primarily, it started 20 years back as a networking site. So only 5 or 8 years back, it got into a different mode and it became a business site. Business in terms of transaction. Like if someone is looking for a job, he's not paying money for that. There's no commercial value attached, but it is a transaction that's happening. So LinkedIn says, if you're not getting what your objective is, your LinkedIn profile is not optimized, it's not working for you. You must optimize your LinkedIn profile to get what you're looking for.
That's
Your
impressive,
employer
because
is
as
looking for
CIOs, we
candidates.
get flooded with sales calls on LinkedIn. And you say that we should reply to every one of those. That would be quite intensive. I'm really impressive if we are able to
Yeah,
do
you have to
that.
spend time. And theoretically, one more thing aside, LinkedIn expects you to, or wants you, or would suggest to you to spend 15 to 20 minutes on LinkedIn every day to update your profile, have new connections, ask for more skills endorsement, connections, make posts, blogs, comment on others' blogs, and all. At least 15, 20 minutes a day you must spend on LinkedIn. Or they say if you're too busy during the working day, then about 1.5 hours on weekends. If people spend 4 and 5 hours on WhatsApp and Facebook, at least they can spend 15, 20 minutes on a site that is promoting you and building your own professional brand and career.
True. I see that we are flooded with questions, so I'll quickly go through them. One of the questions regarding the resume, should one highlight achievements of just the current role or even of the previous 3 roles/jobs?
Every role. In fact, I was doing a resume of someone. He is a CFO of a company abroad, and I was arguing with him something he did 25, 30 years back. He's saying, I want that also. I said, why? No one looks at anything beyond 15 and 20. Saying, no, I did a major assignment in that particular company. I was a part of the mergers and acquisition team. So I want that to be reflected. So yes, we put it on his resume. But theoretically, what you should be talking about is last 15, 20 years. But that is more current and that is more in line with what you're doing. What you did 30 years back has no relevance. Unless it was some major achievement you have had, yes, you can reflect on that.
Do we use paid LinkedIn account? Does it help premium subscriptions kind of thing? So
it has certain values. First of all, if you're searching, you get more search results. Secondly, you also know who are searching for you. So like, there are 3 on the dashboard, 3 metrics that are given. Who viewed you? Last one is who searched for you. And that is a metric given over 7 days period. Supposing 200 people search for you in last 7 days, you can get some identity of the people in terms of what was their background, what was their designation, and what were they searching for when they found you out. So if you're looking for a job, at least you'll have clues in terms of what are people searching your LinkedIn profile, why is it coming on top, is it in sync with what you're really looking for. If it is in sync, fine. Otherwise, you may have to tweak your LinkedIn profile to get the right audience for your LinkedIn profile.
somebody wants to know whether Impact HR Services can help in calibrating our LinkedIn and CV by paying a fee. But I think Kamal has already replied to that, saying that there is some special discounted rate for CIOs of India, which we'll be announcing.
Yeah, Kamal and Mukesh have been tough negotiators. So
that's great.
We have agreed to something which is quite, I would say, modest compared to what we charge. But yes, we'll be happy because also it's a matter of prestige and association. One would like to be associated with such a, I would say, learned and august audience. It also helps in one's own, I would say, mindset and professional working. Being associated with senior people, yes.
Customizing resume. What do we do when we load the resume on a portal?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Internet, I think, is a bit variable.
Oh,
I couldn't
okay.
get your question.
Customizing resume. What do we do when we load the resume on a portal?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Same thing applies for LinkedIn. More for LinkedIn than your resume. So if you're putting your resume on job site, you cannot customize it. Then you have to make it more one size fits all. But also what is equally important is resume, at least you have the opportunity of customizing it. What happens to LinkedIn, which is real time, you cannot customize it on every minute basis and all. So make it one generic type of LinkedIn profile which serves your purpose for various types of jobs. That would be the ideal thing. Make it a more general purpose resume. You cannot make a very specialized resume on LinkedIn because you really don't know who your next employer is and what type of skills they are looking for. So try to cover 360 degrees most of your career. That would be helpful. Same thing if you're posting your CV onto a database of Naukri or Monster, try to make it more general purpose or generic. Like you're a general practitioner, he is good for everything small. But when it comes to a major exercise, cardio or something, you have to go to a specialist. The same thing when you're keeping it on the job site, keep it more general, which can be applicable to a variety of jobs. Don't make it very, very specialized and specific.
But should we really do that? Put our resumes on job portals and not against specific opportunities?
No, I would never recommend senior people putting resumes on databases of Naukri and Monster. One is, I feel it, at least if I were in my shoes, I would feel it below my dignity. Secondly, you really don't know who's seeing it. Some junior guy seeing it, someone, maybe a family member might see it, some your company people might see it and all. You lose your own dignity in the company if they say, hey, to Naukri doon raha hai. No, and when 70% today of the jobs are going through LinkedIn and social media, why do you really need to put up your resume on a Naukri on Monster? No. But what you should really do is meticulously, periodically go through the job listings on LinkedIn, Naukri, Monster, see which are the jobs and apply directly to those jobs. Don't put your CV on a database of a job site. I think it's below your dignity of senior people to be seen by some junior recruiter somewhere or not.
I agree. There is also one question about age over 50 years getting picked up by ATS. I think you've already answered that question. I think somebody wants to know specific output of ATS on one or two resumes. I think that has already been done. Yeah, but maybe if you could see the output of some sample resumes a bit later, I think that would be useful.
Yeah. Sure.
Is
Last
it
time I'd shown
mandatory?
it actually. Last time I'd shown it. If people have 2 minutes time, I can still show it after this. Not a problem.
I think we'll come to the end. Once we come to the end, maybe we can pick it up after we go through some of the questions relevant for today's session. Is it mandatory to inform current salary? Is it good/bad idea to ask company to pay as per their standard or as per market?
No, you should know your worth. You should do a lot of calibration, and that calibration you should do on a very regular basis, whether you're looking for a job or not. You must at least know whether your own company is paying you market rate or not, what you should get or what you deserve. You should always be knowing your market value and market worth. Whether you are going to act on the next step or not, that's a very, very different question. But you do your analysis, understand what exactly is the market value of the type of job you are looking for, and when you go to organization, try to see that you get that minimum level what your market worth is. There's no point changing your job if your market worth is 60 lakhs and you go and accept 55 lakhs. You will have that heartburn at the back of your heart and mind that mujhe to 5 lakh kam mila compared to market, and then naturally you'll start looking for a job within 3 or 6 months time. Get what value you expect and what is your real market value. You'll be at least happy in that organization and you'll work there. You should work at least 3 to 5 years in the next organization. No one likes a job offer, changing job every 6 months or 1 year. So know your market. Yes, then whether you want to compromise, if you see my market value, others are getting 60 lakhs for my type of qualification job. If a company is willing to give you 50 or 55 lakhs, let's say Hindustan Lever or let's say PNG or Google give you 55 lakhs, I'm sure you'll accept it. I'm not sure whether you'll say no to a Google or Microsoft because of 4 or 5 lakhs, because looking at the credibility, the brand equity of the company, the future prospects, and after 2 or 3 years, what your market value will be if you work in those type of companies. So some give and take has to be there, some adjustment. You can't be very fixated. 60 lakhs is what I want. Look at the company, look at the job, look at the opportunity, the growth plan in that particular company, your market value, how it goes up. These are very, very important criteria also.
What are the strategies for career transition during the gig economy, especially in a new domain?
No, I can't hear.
Oh, is it still bad?
No,
what are the
I couldn't hear.
strategies for career transition?
Okay,
Oh, I'm so
I will take this question.
yeah,
The
please.
point is that what are the and I will take another question which has come to me directly one to one. There's a you discussed about the cover page, and there's an executive summary also. So what is the difference, and what is the better to use that?
See, you have to have both. Executive summary is really on top of your resume, giving hardly 4 or 5 lines your entire career in a snapshot. What have you done? What have you achieved? Where have you reached? And effectively giving why should the company be looking at you? What value you bring to the company? So that is really like a elevator pitch, giving your details. After that, it's for the particular recruiter whether to go further into the resume or not. If he's already got an impression about you, reading that first 4 or 5 lines, if you happen to be, let's say, a CIO of a large organization, and let's say a Pfizer, and you have done some major, I would say, initiatives over there at 300 or 500 crores, he's got what he wants. He doesn't need to have that time to read the resume, and he'll call you for an interview. But where a cover letter becomes important is because it's a precursor to the resume. In hardly 2 or 3 paras, good cover letter should not be more than 2 or 3 paras. Giving a brief within 2 or 3 lines, what's your background, how you fit and how you match with that particular company. What is the company's job description? How do you match is what you're guiding the potential reader of your resume. This is where I'm matching and all. This is why I'm interested. So when he goes through a resume, he has an idea where all the matches are taking place and he looks at those aspects. Also, one more thing, if I can add, resume we have been talking about is only from one point of view, for shortlisting for interview or not. Resume has two more advantages, but after you have been shortlisted for interview, first is the biggest advantage a resume has is because that is the document a potential employer will refer to at the interview. If you structure a resume in a very intelligent fashion, it gives you the, I would say, probability and possibility of navigating the interview in the areas of your strengths. If you have worded and you have formatted your resume very accurately and very focusing on your strength areas, obviously a person is going to ask you questions based on your resume only. If certain important achievements of your career come on top, first question is going to ask, "Acha, idhar ye kya kiya, udhar kya kiya." So you have control on the entire direction of the interview. It helps you to really do remarkably well in the interview. Third advantage of the resume is for the employer to really go through in advance before he actually calls you for an interview, understand your background thoroughly, understand, make notes, and find out what questions to be asked. So it has a dual advantage after you have used the resume for getting shortlisted by a company. You can control the direction of the interview, and the person who has control of the ship is obviously the one who is piloting the ship or the plane. You get into areas of your strength and you try to avoid areas of your weakness.
You discussed about do's and don'ts during the interview. One thing which has come is what is the role of the body language? Because in the physical days, right now, last 1 year it is a virtual, but in the physical day, what is the role of body language, eye to eye connect, or hand movement, or something which is a do's and don'ts for the body language, if you can highlight.
No, very, very important. Very, very important. Body language and all. Invariably, what happens is most of the companies have already decided who to offer the job on the basis of resumes itself. They do a lot of 360-degree analysis of one before the interview, a few days before the interview, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your social media. They'll dig deep into the social media. That's why I said it has a very, very long memory, social media. You may have done something innocuously 5 or 10 years back, maybe had a drunken party or an accident. Sometimes it might come up in your, when they analyze your entire background. It could be a deal breaker for you. So you have to be very cautious, very, very clear what you write on Facebooks of the world and Instagrams of the world. Somewhere it might come back again. That is one thing that is very, very important. Second thing is based on the resumes, people have already worked out. I've been on boards of a lot of companies. Already a priority. Acha, ye best, ye number 2 and number 3. Interview is really to really revalidate the assumptions, whether this candidate is really as good at what his resume is talking about. Third thing is, as they say, the moment you enter interview room, he's already seen your body language and he knows whether you're in or out. Baki, okay, some probability after discussion, he may change his mind. But the way you enter, the confidence, the way you shake hands, the way you look at him, whether you're nervous, whether you're confident, the way you talk, your pleasant look, attire, I would say your entire body language makes a lot of difference to the person. Very, very clear. How you work, how do you sit, how do you shake hands, how much time you shake hands. These are all very small cues that people pick up and try to make an evaluation. Also, something very interesting I could tell you, olden days, when actually physical interviews are happening, and at times people wrote something on the resume, like a cover letter, at times people used to write, and rest all used to be typed and sent. There were handwriting experts used to analyze your personality even before you went for the interview. Today, that role has been taken over by NLP, neuro linguistic programming. By reading not even your handwritten, your 1 or 2 sentences on your CV, if it is actually written by you, they can judge you entirely and your entire personality. So the HR people do go through all this support system, trying to really put all the jigsaw puzzles and make a big final jigsaw. What exactly and where do you fit in? What's your entire personality makeup? Through psychologists, through psychometric assessment, through 360-degree interviewing, I would say through panel discussion, interview with the global board, competency map interview, various type of, I would say, exercises they make you go through to really understand whether you are the right person for them. Very, very. So body language is one of the most important things. And as you must have seen a lot of movies and all, especially when you're in the casino or playing poker or bridge or whatever it is, you do not give your own impression what you really are feeling. You are trying to communicate something like your mask, something you are communicating which is very different, trying to convince the other guy, whereas internally you might be some other person. So that level of confidence you have, the way you are talking, communicating is very, very important.
Okay, another point which Annie was asking, during this change in economy and all those things, if somebody CIO is looking for a career in a new domain, like somebody from BFSI to manufacturing or from manufacturing to healthcare, there are various domain and people are expert in their domain. So if somebody wants to change the domain after say 20 years of experience, there is a question, what is the strategy in career transition? What is the good and bads for that? I think I
No,
taken the there's a I taken I added few more lines in that question.
see, what happens is now I'm not very clear when you're asking in terms of change domain. Are you going to be in IT and from BFSI you're moving to, let's say, retail or consumer products?
CIO CTO from a BFSI from a say for me broking to a healthcare or a manufacturing, or we are into a new domain completely. We are managing the technology, but vertical wise we are changing. So how it is?
Absolutely. Absolutely no problem. In fact, your basic core competence remains the same. It's a transferable skill which you can utilize right from your BFSI to retail to industrial products and all. One of the most, I would say, famous examples I always give is not really in terms of domain. I don't remember the name of this gentleman. He was the CEO of one of the global engineering companies in India, the Indian office, and he moved over as the CEO of Microsoft in India. From engineering to Microsoft, I've seen people moving from electronics to seeds companies, total different domain and different work itself. You're at least talking about IT skills transferred from BFSI to some other vertical, not at all a problem. In fact, you can go back in time. Initially, it was only consumer products, FMCG. I'm a salesperson, as I told you in the past. I've helped launch Gillette in India. I was among the first team members, first 4 or 5 in India. Those are times FMCG on top. You had companies like Levers, P&G, and Colgate, and all that. Then government got into private sector banks. Where did the banks take the people from? All from consumer products companies. Why consumer products companies? It's totally different domain. When selling is different, but still they felt these are the best people in terms of, okay, to some extent skill sets, but more in terms of their applicability and attitude. Today, most of the employees are looking for attitude rather than relevant skills. Because if you have the right attitude, you can be trained. If you don't have the right attitude, it's absolutely no point really looking at you. Later on, from banking, telecom came in. So people started moving from bank. So it was consumer products to banking to telecom, then went to edutech, fintech, all over the world now. So transferability in terms of your skills, if it is there, you can always go to any domain. There's no problem.
One of our friend has said, one of our friend has already replied, he moved from a manufacturing to, and he says just only hard work pays.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your,
Okay, okay.
your
There is
confidence.
another question which is
One
coming
question.
back to the CV or resume. Is there any, again something related to ATS? Is there any particular sequence in the resume, like summary, education, experience, or something? Is there anything, or ATS by default take it?
No, it picks up anything anywhere in the CV. It is able to do 8 and 10 like CVs in a day. It just picks up zoom, zoom, zoom. There's no sequence, nothing absolutely. It will pick up your skills from any part of the CV, from top to bottom, anywhere. It has to be there and it has to be formatted in such a way that it can distinguish that this is where your experience is, this is where your education and all that. Last time we ran this on the ATS, the employment went into education and all. It could not differentiate, it could not distinguish that this is education, but it will pick up things.
I was just curious about one thing. Am I audible now? Is it better
Yeah,
now?
much better. Yeah.
Sorry for that. Sorry for that. So what I wanted to understand is in your presentation, you mentioned that one of the challenges for candidates is diversity.
I think
I
I'm
just
unable
wanted to
to hear. Kamal,
understand
can
why
you hear?
diversity.
See, there are, okay, let's look at it from the corporate side. First of all, companies now are mandated to have diversity in their companies. And most of multinational companies have certain norms. In fact, even the Indian government has in parliament, there should be 33% women. So that diversity is now prevailing all over the world. Second thing is diversity. When I say is different types of people are there, they feel challenged to get into good corporates and all that. They feel that they are the underdogs. They may not get a proper job because of their orientation and other things. I don't want to spell out the orientation and all. So there is a way they can get around. There were some companies in the past, at least I know a few years back, in terms of call center and all, they used to take bisexuals. Now, normally for them to get a job, transgenders and all, it's not very easy. But that company was built on having only transgenders and bisexuals in that company. So there are a lot of people having different types of diversity, which I won't dwell on right now, but they feel challenged in getting good jobs. There has to be a way for them to find the jobs. So some companies are open to it. They have to identify the right company to get in. Every company may not accept it. Then there are visually challenged also people. There are a lot of companies now looking at people who are visually challenged and helping them out to settle down and re-establish. And a lot of good companies, well-known brands. So this is where I talk about diversity. You may not be typically a normal person. You might have certain challenges, and how do you get around those challenges? You might feel it's a big challenge, but there might be ways of overcoming those challenges.
One more question. How does a brand makes an impact? Like somebody is working in a big brand as a CIO and somebody in a normal, known, unknown brand and almost at same CTC and same work pressure, workload and something same domain, same vertical. How, for the next job, how does it makes a difference?
No, it makes a lot of difference. See, brand means what exactly are the connotation of a brand?
The company brand where you are working.
Yeah, see, company brand means why I keep on saying companies like Hindustan Lever and P&G and all, these are global brands, very reputed, very recognized. They are known for their culture, they're known for the systems, they are known for the policies and all ethics that they practice and all. Look at that, someone coming from, let's say, Hindustan Lever, with, I may not want to name certain companies, certain Indian, I should not say Marwadi or Lala company or whatever. The culture is different. So if it was the Hindustan Lever, now if Amazon wants to take a person, will he take him that person from Hindustan Lever? Will he take it from, let's say, arbitrarily Imamis of the world or something? That culture, that is where what makes a difference, because they're used to a different way of working, the, I would say, code of ethics, the style of operating and all that. They are wanting those values in you. They hope that you have got those values inculcated in you so that you can transfer those values to that company. They'll be more in tune to working with those type of people with that type of background. That's where the culture of the company becomes very, very important, because they feel they can relate better to that.
I think questions are still flowing in. We are already overshoot the
In
time.
fact, I'll tell you one thing. I do a lot of reading if we have a luxury of 2 minutes time and all. Culture, you're talking about culture of the company. I remember two things about Azim Premji. He was setting up some project. I mean, I'm poor at remembering the details and names. He was for electricity for that particular plant or project. He was being harassed by those officers for money. He refused to pay any money. In 3 years, his whole project got delayed. But he said, I will not pay even a rupee of bribe. I will do it on my own. And finally, after 3 years, his competitors may have gone much ahead, but he still finally got the thing done and implemented it, but without paying a bribe for 3 years. That is culture. And my own company, I know Madra Courts where I worked, we were hauled up. This was long back when I was a sales manager in MP 81, 1981. I got a call from my dealer in Jabalpur. These people, weights and measures people, I come and confiscated some of your threads because they're saying it does not carry the Weights and Measures Act. Now, Weights and Measures Act is more applicable for food items, not for thread, which is not a perishable item. The dealer said, sir, and I'm talking about 81, आप 300 रुपया उसको दे दो, and वो निपट लेगा. My company, Madrakot, said, no, we will not pay. We paid 5,000 rupees. Every month I used to fly down to Jabalpur from Indore, and then there's an adjournment. I came back, I got transferred finally to Bombay. The case was still going on. Company must have spent 30 or 40,000 rupees, but they didn't spend that 300 rupees on the price. That is the culture. That's what the multinationals are looking for.
There are two things which is coming repeatedly. One is ATS demo, if we can have it. And second one, a good question is that what is the transition from CIO to next? Whether COO or CEO, what is the, if somebody goes from a CIO to CEO role, what is the expectations? What is the additional skill a recruiter will look for, or the target company will look from? Because somebody has already spent 8-10 years as a CIO. So now he becomes, what next?
So broadly,
same company, or how to move ahead?
No, we have been approached by so many people in the last 6 months, 8 months. So many CFOs. Okay, I've been doing this finance job for last 8 years, 10 years. I want to make the transition to get into general management as a CEO or the MD of the company and all. We have helped them make the CVs. Try to put yourself in the shoes of a CEO. What exactly are the skills or qualities required by the CEO? One second. Try to look at what are the skills required by the CEO, trying to see where you fit in, what type of skills do you have, because after all, even if you are a CIO, you are still a business leader. You are handling a fair amount of strategy, planning, implementation, financials, budgeting and all that. Except that, and you have also been working cross-functionally in various teams. You have some idea of how other teams are operating in terms of you're implementing SRP, SAP and ERP projects for various modules, module or sales SD module. You're familiar with those processes and all that. So I don't think it's a major big leap of faith or transition to get in from CIO to a CEO. It might be two-stage operation. They might give you a job, let's say as head of special projects, to give you more familiarity with how the other functions are working, and then move on to the CIO, from CIO to CEO position. Not impossible, can be done. In fact, the same thing applies for HR. There used to be a time when HR people were really siloed and strategized. He's an HR person, he cannot go. But today, HR people have made transition straight into CEOs of many companies. Santrup Mishra is a classic example. Gold medalist of this, head of HR of Birla Group, now MD Birla Carbon. That transition takes place. It depends on your own attitude, your ability to learn, and as we discuss, your confidence in yourself. Ultimately, you have to be confident in yourself if you are to make that transition.
I think in the interest of time, we can see the ATS demo and then we can conclude.
Just give me a minute to set it up. And okay. Out of curiosity and interest, I'll show you. Someone has created a resume of Jeff Bezos, the promoter of Amazon. No, and I had seen somewhere CV of Modi. Unfortunately, I don't know where it's gone. It's really interesting for you to look at it. And if you see what they're talking, is just straight, simple, no color, no, I would say graphics, simple and textual totally. Very, very simple language. What he's talking about. That's how a CV should look like. Absolutely factual and performance oriented, achievement oriented. On recognition, innovated, concept to the Amazon web series or services. Very interesting. And below that, earlier career and then the education. That's how American CV. In one page, you're talking about the full, I would say, career of one of the richest people in the world. Just one page. Fine, give me a second. I'll just set up the. Okay, this is the same CV we had done last time, so we'll run it through. Let me show you the CV first. We have cloaked the name. This was an actual live example. We have done the CV of this person. This was his original version, and he was in HR. He's still in HR. Here he says 19 years experience. Actually, he has got 26 years of experience. And we have just put his company name Vodafone. He's not in Vodafone. And his entire details, if you can see, he's been, except the name we have changed of the company, everything is same in the CV. Since 2010, last virtually 11 years, he is working in Vodafone. And 2013 till now as the VP HR. And before that, he has worked with some financial services, ICICI Prudential, NIS Patel, L&T and all that. Okay, just to evaluate his CV, 3-4 things. When I said contemporary CV, in today's world, as I said, you don't put your marital status. No one puts it. You don't put languages. Unless you're applying for a job in Spain or something, then the knowledge of Spanish becomes important. Otherwise, in India, whether you know Hindi, Marathi, doesn't make any difference. If you're a salesperson, sales executive, it may make a difference, not at a head of HR level. Again, hobbies like walking, traveling, teaching, these are no hobbies. Yes, if you have excelled, if you have been marathon, or someone was mentioning 2 days back to me, he's a sea swimmer, something that is different, where you challenge yourself and your mental fortitude and strength of your mind comes in, which helps a recruiter to evaluate you that you're a strong-minded person. Like running marathons is not very easy. You have pain, you are suffering, but you still want to get to the end point, the goal. If you've done something exceptional, please put. Yeah, people will be interested in reading. But just saying, I love reading, I love teaching, it doesn't have any value. No one likes your address. No one is going to send you a letter or courier. So why are you using your real estate for all this purpose? Put in anything that is there that will work for you in terms of helping the recruiter decide to call you for an interview or not. Anything that is irrelevant, please don't put it in the resume. It doesn't work for anyone. I hope his CV is there. I have to save it. Now, here it is. This is actually the backend. This is what is called the scanning software. It's called a parsing software. Oracle doesn't, Taleo doesn't make this. They buy it and install it in their overall ERP. ATS is after all in ERP. What we have been talking about restricted right now is the initial part, the shortlisting part. After that, the interview, generation, scheduling, offer letters all go through the ERP, through the ATS system. And this is a backend raw data. The front end is, of course, white label depending on the company's requirement. Okay, Pradeep Mane, if you see over here, first page, it has brought out everything, including his where he's working, address, other things are all there. No issues on the first page. His email ID, phone numbers, all that are there. Second page is a disaster. They are showing that he's got only 8 years experience, whereas theoretically he had 26 years experience. It's not picking up any information. Now, if it was being used for running a search and people are looking for, say, 25 to 30 years experience, if his overall experience shows as 8 years, his CV will not be picked up for the job, even though he had 25, 26 years experience. Then it is picking up only from Vodafone onwards. That's why from 2013, 8 years experience. It's not picking up any of his Edelweiss, L&T, and I don't know, ICICI Prudential, other experiences not picking up. NIS Potter. Qualification, yes, sorry. Yeah, here you see qualification is picking up the name of the company. Edelweiss is showing as qualification. ICICI Bank as a qualification. Everything else has gone into qualification because of not proper formatting of his resume. The ATS was not able to understand whether what he did in Edelweiss was a job or whether he was studying in Edelweiss. These are all deal breakers which will affect your probability of getting a job with a company. Work period is 8 to 10 years. Also, one more thing I have not picked up. Yeah, here also he has not put his LinkedIn URL. If his LinkedIn URL had been there, it would have been over here at this place. So there are a lot of gaps and in terms of formatting, and we can try and analyze why his other experiences were not picked up. Yeah. Work journey, past experience. No ATS can understand that work journey means experience. You might have fancy terminology for yourself, but it has to be in sync with what the ATS has been programmed to pick up. ATS can understand only experience. You might say work journey and the splendid things I did in my career, it can't pick up all those things. So it has to be very simple, to the point, based on the language which the ATS can understand. Because he's used work journey, it has not picked up this as an experience. Although he has put later on past experience, but it thought work journey doesn't mean anything. They thought it's part of education somewhere, because he's talking somewhere about qualifications. It presumes that this all is again part of qualification, not his job. Any questions you'll have? This, and incidentally, out of the 25 resumes I received, there were 3 where everything was a blank. It didn't pick up the name, it didn't pick up the qualification, it didn't pick up the experience. That was very, very, I don't want to reveal it over here in a public forum. Maybe those people, I can advise them later on. Because suddenly if you see, like here, there's qualification. 1 second, I'll go back to that.
Prakash, one thing I want to ask, after mentioning work experience, when we mention the company name and the duration till from when to when we have worked over there, normally people directly mention the designation without stating, okay, designation, then this write as CIO. So is it better or is it recommended to write it as designation so that ATS will recognize it?
No, the ATS has been programmed. They are very intelligent. ATS is all very, very intelligent systems. 1 second, I'll show you.
In the CV, what you have shown, he has clearly mentioned designation so and so. He has first write designation, then he has mentioned.
No, where is he put designation? Duration.
Designated as VP Rural.
It can't identify all that.
Okay. So if someone write just as VP Rural, so ATS can identify. So does it
It may pick up, yes. Then also depends on every ATS is very unique. There are, as I said, 25 brands of ATS globally, and each of them also have more iterations because they go on upgrading the technology. Today, last time I said that we should not use a PDF format for resume because most of the early legacy ATS cannot pick up information from PDF, although in terms of formatting, it looks nice and neat. 15-20 years back when ATS was first introduced, that time it accepted only rich text. It's only gradually it went on to Word. Now some of the ATS like this on Oracle and Talio can pick up PDF formats. Others cannot pick up the PDF format. So it's better to err on the caution. Same thing over here, designated as it has not picked up, but there are also sequences. Whatever you do, you must do it very like ISO, systematically. Even if you are making a mistake, make it the same. If you are writing company name first and then designation and then the period, all through your resume, you should do the same way. At times, then people interchange, they put the designation and then the company. They break the sequence and again the ATS can't recognize what is a company and what is a designation. So whatever you're doing, you should do systematically and at least try to put in the language which most ATS is used to.
And many times,
Prakash, one of the questions which we are hearing asked multiple times is whether there is a standard ATS friendly template available, or are there any free ATS compliance tools available on which we can test the CVs?
There are a whole set of guidelines available. Whole about 10-15 guidelines are there in terms of what makes a resume ATS compliant. You should not have graphics, you should not have logos, you should not have timelines, colors, you should not have columns in your resume. Because if there's a column like we had shown, I'll show you still there's one more resume. This is what a visual resume looks like. You know, this is in columns. He's got one column over here, one column over here. Not only distracts the reading of ATS because ATS reads left to right, planning and technology and hands, and then it will read leadership over here. So it doesn't know what this language is and treats that garbage. Same thing with the human eye. In the 5 or 6 seconds that he's supposed to reading, he really doesn't know whether to read this side or this side. The time is already gone. So if it is free flow from top to bottom, it makes easier sense. So these are various guidelines that are used to make it more ATS compliant. Over here also, you should never write anything on any colored background. If you see over here, the contrast black on white versus white on blue, this contrast is better. After all, it is electronic scanning. The biggest contrast you can have is black on white. That's why you have blackboard and white chalk. The more you start reducing like your contrast on your TV itself, why do you set the contrast? To have better picture and image. Same thing over here. If you put black on white, it looks better from readability point of view of both the ATS and the any human eye who's looking at it. The more you put it on colored background, it might look good on color, but it is affecting the readability by the ATS.
I think we have come to the end of the session. We have exceeded all time limits. So I'll hand it back to Atul to close the session.
Yeah, I think so. So it's almost, and we are an hour beyond the designated time which we had. But I think one interesting feedback which I would like to give is the count of participants hasn't tapered to that extent, and we still have around 125 odd participants. So it all is a great reflection on and the great session which we had today, Prakash ji, and
Thank you.
indeed a great learning for each one of us. And I must say that this session, this insightful session, I would say, on how to crack an interview opportunity and also to how to handle these salary negotiations are extremely important. And most of us with experience think that no, we know it all, but then if you get into deep into the details, we realize that no, there's much to comprehend and much to learn and fine tune our presence in that frame. I think what was also important is that no, when you talk about an interview, it's about those 30 odd crucial minutes which we get, maybe or even less, and making every minute of that interview count, factoring the types and modes of interviews which we do and conduct, especially around the pre-interview preparation. You also spoke about the dressing up. How does one dress up for the D-Day, and how does one handle the behavioral questions? So, and of course, you touched upon due research and how to practice responses to some commonly asked questions. Those are extremely important. And the other point which is extremely relevant, which we all found, was that we often think great about our own self, that no, if we are earning say 60 lakhs, so we think that we should be getting 90 lakhs, but nobody is going to offer us 90 just because we think so. So they would actually consider our market worth, and so should we be. So it's always said that no, you once before you research the organization, it's always good to research about your own self, factor your market worth, and then also do a great fitment. Try to understand the fitment with the prospect organization, because once you're able to prove your metal, and as you said, and prove your worth for the prospect, then discussions around these commercial numbers become more meaningful. I think this session, I sincerely hope that will help each one of us to be better prepared for our future engagements and future opportunities which we seek out for. Thank you once again. And before I conclude, I would request Kamal to say a few words, and then we conclude.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I would say a very informative session. Thanks, Prakashji, for covering all the aspects of last session and coming up with new insights today. As Atul has nicely summed up all those things. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the detail. I would like to thank all of you who have come together, and thanks to our EC team of CIS of India. Special thanks to Mukesh Mehta for curating this. Thanks Atul, Annie, and other EC members for helping us to curate this session. Thanks to all of you. With that, I think we should conclude this session. Thank you.